Disclaimer. This video contains music and video footage that I do not own. Credits at the end of the video. This video contains frightening imagery. Your discretion is advised. This video is not intended for children under the age of 13, nor is my channel. The Child Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA, states that nobody at the age of 13 should have, among other things, a YouTube account. Hello boyos, girlos, and non-binary genderlos, and welcome to another Lost Media video. As you can tell by the other videos I make, I love video games. Video games come in many shapes and sizes and can disappear for about as many reasons. They can be cancelled, developers can go bankrupt, they can be stolen, or maybe they just run out of physical copies. No matter how video games are lost, it's a shame when one of the most labor-intensive art forms gets lost, so today, here are 20 lost video games. Star Wars 1313 was a cancelled video game developed by LucasArts as a tie-in to the Star Wars franchise. The game was a third-person shooter and set itself apart from most of the Star Wars media in that it was much darker and grittier than anything seen before it. The game was formally announced at E3 2012 and would have players playing as bounty hunters navigating level 1313 on Coruscant and would serve to give backstory to Boba Fett. There would also be droid helpers to move objects in the level so the player could progress. On October 30th, 2012, Disney announced that they bought Lucasfilm on the Star Wars license. At first, LucasArts claimed that the acquisition would not affect development of 1313, though it was put on hold before being cancelled when Disney dissolved LucasArts and gave the game rights for Star Wars to EA. The game was nowhere near complete, and outside of the trailer and test footage, nothing has surfaced of 1313, and it's unlikely anything will. PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale was a crossover platform fighter released for the PS3 and PlayStation Vita in November 2012 in an attempt to capitalize on the popularity of the Super Smash Bros. Series. The game was developed by Superbot Entertainment, though once Sony and Superbot split, Sony Santa Monica took over for the development of DLC. The game performed poorly, and thus in 2013 it was announced that all planned DLC for the game would be cancelled. What we know of the content lost in that announcement is minimal, but we know the highly requested character Dart Beld from The Legend of Dragoon was set as the first DLC, and was actually fully modeled. Fan backlash from the got so bad that a release Dart campaign actually started, to no avail. Abe from Oddworld Abe's Odyssey was also announced as the second DLC character, and a stage fusing the game's journey and Gravity Rush was planned, though only one piece of concept art remains from that. Fallout Van Buren was a role-playing game developed by Black Isle Studios as a continuation of the Fallout series after Fallout 2, but not as a direct sequel. On December 8th, 2003, Interplay Entertainment laid off the development team, and the game was cancelled. This event led to the sale of the Fallout series to Bethesda Softworks and eventually mutated into Fallout 3, splitting the Fallout fanbase in half. Bethesda remade the game from scratch after the purchase, and Van Buren was almost completely thrown out. Fallout fan site No Mutants Allowed eventually got their hands on some design documents for Van Buren, as well as an entire tech demo for the game releasing it on May 2nd, 2007. In 2010, Bethesda and Obsidian Entertainment released Fallout New Vegas, which is composed of many scrapped elements from Van Buren, including the Hoover Dam and the NCR. Van Buren was never fully finished, and as such is unlikely to be released outside of the tech demo we already have. Silent Hill: Cold Heart was a rejected pitch for a new Silent Hill game intended to be released on the Wii in 2007, developed by Climax and published by Konami. The game follows a mentally unstable college student named Jessica Chambers, who loses herself in a blizzard on her way to visit her parents, and follows an ambulance to Silent Hill. As is typical amongst older Wii titles, the game would have focused on demonstrating the Wii's motion controls. The game was also planned to have an in-depth character building system with the psychological profile, where experiences in the game would affect the psychological profile and vice versa. Nintendo's Wi-Fi connection would also be used to report real-world weather in the game. The game's existence can only be traced to a leaked pitch document, which featured all of the above information as well as a very detailed walkthrough of a level titled The Lake, which more than likely may have had an early prototype at the time. Climax seemed to overestimate the technical power of the Wii, which may have contributed to its cancellation. While Silent Hill: Cold Heart may have not released in the state that the developers originally pitched, Silent Hill shattered memories borrowed heavily from Cold Heart, so the work they had didn't go to waste. Final Fantasy VI, the interactive CG game, better known by fans as Final Fantasy 64, was a prototype by Square Enix, then known as Squaresoft, for a Final Fantasy installment on next-gen consoles at the time, which ended up being a small playable demo. As the result of a rumor in the October 1995 issue of Game Fan magazine, the game was speculated as being a new Final Fantasy game for the Nintendo 64, hence the nickname. This rumor was debunked when Square announced that they were making Final Fantasy VII for PlayStation at the time. The swap was made when Square discovered that the PlayStation's CD-ROM discs had much greater storage than the 64's ROM cartridges. Not only that, but Nintendo's content standards made the game hard to make into the thing Square wanted it to be. The demo was revealed at SIGGRAPH 1995 and featured Terra, Locke, and Shadow as playable characters. The demo featured them fighting a golem with a revamped battle system, and characters were controlled by drawing shapes with a mouse cursor. A recording of the SIGGRAPH demo was released on Square's Preview Extra, though no surviving version of the demo exists today. Halo DS is the name given to an unlicensed game in the Halo series made for the Nintendo DS. The game has had no official release, and its existence can only be traced to a single man by the name of Matt Casamassina, who worked for IGN. On January 4th, 2007, he made a blog post claiming he'd played the game and that it was a fully up and running demo. On July 18th that year, Bungie employees Frank O'Connor and Brian Gerard said in an interview that there was no Halo game for the DS, at least not officially. Casamassina was accused of faking the whole debacle, with him replying to the situation with a blog post on October 2nd, 2007. In the blog post, he stated that the game was real and created by a real development studio with a very big publisher. With the statement, he released screenshots and footage. In one video, he's even seen playing with IGN's Mark Bozon, who said the game was made by a AAA publisher. People were understandably skeptical, and as it turns out, the game was very similar in gameplay to GoldenEye Rogue Agent, which also released for the DS. This led to the speculation that Endspace developed the game and EA published it. No playable demo of the game has been released, and no proof of its legitimacy has ever been uncovered. For all we know, it might just be a prank by IGN. In June 2018, Telltale Games announced that they'd obtained the license to make an episodic adventure game based on the popular Netflix TV show Stranger Things. The game's full plot is unknown, but bits and pieces are available. Leaks indicate that the game would be set in between seasons 1 and 2 of the show on March 22nd, 1984. The game would be set during Will Byers' birthday, and Dr. Sam Owens was mentioned as being in the game. Will was also transported to the Upside Down, which is an important plot point in season 2 of the show. The game was cancelled later that year as Telltale announced it was filing for bankruptcy, and all of its employees had been laid off. Skybound Games took over development of The Walking Dead, the final season, and LCG Games, the current Telltale Games, announced that they'd be finishing the cancelled Wolf Among Us 2. The Stranger Things game has remained cancelled and will likely stay that way. The soundtrack was rumored to be created by Antimo and Wells, who released the entire soundtrack on their YouTube channel on October 27, 2020. A Reddit user named Random Guy on Reddit did leak some footage of the game with some concept art, and no one's really sure how he did it. Either way, those are the only remnants of the game we actually have. 8 Days is a cancelled video game developed by London Studio for the PlayStation 3. The game would follow a good or bad character depending on the player's choices. The good character works as a detective to stop a mob syndicate and find his son, while the bad character works to take revenge on the same syndicate before they cross paths and work together. 8 Days was first shown off as a tech demo during Sony's 2005 E3 press conference, where a scene of the gas station blowing up was used to demonstrate the processor of the PS3. The official trailer wasn't shown until a year later, where a shootout occurs between two sports cars, which culminates in another shootout in a diner exploding due to a tanker truck crashing before the logo of the game is shown. However, on June 4th, 2008, Sony announced that 8 Days and The Getaway 3 were both cancelled, purportedly due to the amount of first-party exclusive titles being developed at the time needing more resources allocated to their development. 8 Days' lack of an online mode didn't help matters, as Sony was making a push to more online-compatible games. However, Sony then later announced in October 2009 that the game wasn't cancelled but merely just put on hold. An ex-developer of London Studio implied that the game was cancelled, but also said that the game was still in pre-production and hadn't entered full production. Nothing has been heard from the game since, and it's safe to say Sony's first assessment was right. On August 12, 2014, a mysterious game was released on the PlayStation Store. Going by the name PT, the game took the internet by storm, with everyone and their grandma trying to get their hands on it. The game followed an unnamed protagonist finding themselves locked in an ever-looping hallway of a house, where every repeated visit makes the house get more and more sinister, with creepy imagery, cryptic messages, and other frightening things that bring a certain series to mind. Once the game was beaten, the protagonist was sent to the town of Silent Hill, with the title card of Silent Hills appearing from the fog. Fans were hyped. With the likes of Hideo Kojima, Guillermo del Toro, and Norman Reedus at the helm, the game for all intents and purposes was going to be a return to form for the series since the last few installments. This did not last. On October 9th, 2015, Kojima was laid off from Konami, with a non-compete until the end of December, and him not being allowed to attend the Games Award show as he had been locked in a room for the final 6 months of Metal Gear Solid 5. What actually happened between Konami and Kojima can only be speculated, but due to this drama, Silent Hills was cancelled and PT was removed from the PlayStation Store for good, making the game extremely rare. Kojima, Reedus, and Del Toro eventually created Death Stranding, with commercial and critical success following. Since Silent Hill's cancellation, the Silent Hill series has remained dormant, outside of a pachinko machine and a crossover with Dead by Daylight. We have 3 Wii U Tech Demos to cover this entry. The first is Chase Me. Chase Me was a tech demo developed to showcase the Wii U gamepad and followed a Mii dressed as Mario getting chased by 4 other Miis. The 4 Miis have to catch Mario before the timer runs out. The tech demo version of Chase Me has yet to resurface, though launch title Nintendo Land features a minigame called Mario Chase, which is virtually identical to Chase Me. The tech demo has yet to resurface. Next is Battle Me. The demo was made for the same purpose as Chase Me and followed 2 Miis dressed as Samus Aran from Metroid, whose goal it is to shoot enemies, targets, or each other. At the same same time, a Mii in a gunship is trying to defeat the other Miis. Like the first, the Nintendo Land featured a minigame called Metroid Blast, which functioned near identically, except the gunship worked with the ground Miis and it was a more PvE-focused adventure instead of a PvPvE game. The tech demo has yet to release in its tech demo state. Last, we have New Super Mario Bros. Mii, which is actually different from a launch title minigame. New Super Mario Bros. Mii is based on New Super Mario Bros. Wii and at new levels allowed people to play as Miis and at a 10-minute time limit. The demo was made to demonstrate the Wii U's off-TV capability where it can be played on the gamepad while the TV shows something else. Since the demo showed up, it has not been released, though New Super Mario Bros. U was released as a launch title for the Wii U when it was released. 1 vs 100 Live is a video game adaptation of the game show 1 vs 100 released for the Xbox 360 on the Xbox Live Gold service. 101 players would play in a match where the 1 would have to answer trivia questions against the 100, known as the mob. The game was only available during special play hours, though Microsoft points were given out as a reward to those who won the game. Players were eliminated after getting a question wrong, with the 1's points being scaled off of how many of the mob were eliminated. The mob's points were scaled based on how large the pot was when the 1 was eliminated, with it being divided evenly among the remaining mob. If players were chosen for neither side, they played as the crowd, who answered questions for fun and improved their chances to play as the mob or the 1 next time around. The top 3 crowd members would earn a free Xbox Live Arcade game. Between rounds, the players would see a commercial from a sponsor or live commentary from a host. In addition, there was a mode called Extended Play, in which there was a large mob who answered themed questions, with the answer percentage being shown afterwards. No points were given, but mob and 1 chances were increased for playing. During the game's run, it was available for Xbox Live Gold users to download and play. After 2 seasons, the game was taken off the Xbox Live Gold service and cancelled due to it not drawing enough revenue to warrant development, maintenance, and the amount of prizes they were giving away. On August 15th, 2018, user GameCheat13 uploaded a pre-release build of the game onto archive.org, though this build can only be played on Xbox 360 dev kits or hacked Xbox 360 clients. On March 25th, 2021, the entire soundtrack was uploaded to yandex.disc. The game is not yet returned in a fully playable state. By far the weirdest item on our list, Attack of the Killer Rabbids from Outer Space was a first-person shooter developed by Ubisoft Montpellier sometime in 2011, loosely based on the Raving Rabbids series. The game was to be released for the PS3, Xbox 360, and Wii U. The game was to feature a frightening cousin of the Rabbids who would invade Earth and wreak havoc on humanity. The gameplay was your standard shooter, where killing Rabbids would earn you points, and you played as one of the soldiers sent to kill them, with a variety of weapons at your disposal. The game would have been playable with up to 4 players. As if the concept of sending soldiers after Rabbids wasn't odd enough, the developers realized the game they were making was way too inappropriate for the image of the Raving Rabbids, and thus changed the name of the game to Killer Freaks from Outer Space, with the Rabbids being replaced with the titular Freaks being a reptilian creature. The game was then revealed as a launch title for the Wii U. Early footage was praised that the team was dissatisfied with the product, as the Freaks were incredibly difficult to see due to their size, which caused players to constantly have to look at the ground instead of anywhere else. The game's fast pace also didn't fit the Wii U, and thus the game was reworked again into what we know as Zombie U, which released on November 18th, 2012 with ports for PC, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One, later releasing on August 18th, 2015. The previous versions of the game are unlikely to be released. Agartha is the name given to a cancelled survival horror game for the Sega Dreamcast, with the earliest claimed development starting in 1998. The game's premise is as follows. During the winter of 1929, in a Romanian village that was partially destroyed by a landslide that occurred during a mysterious earthquake, a subterranean city exists called Agartha. This is where evil is being kept prisoner and is desperate to escape. Kirk, the human hero, will encounter a series of characters from villages, the living dead, fanatics from an evil sect, monsters, demons, soldier monks, priests, archangels, and the Sentinel, who is the ultimate personification of evil. As Kirk, you can decide to save as many innocent people as possible or to trigger the arrival of chaos on Earth. As Kirk's morals waver between good and evil, this ambiguity changes the aims of the adventure and the narration of the story. In 1997, Sega acquired No Cliché Studios, a French developer tasked with developing the game. Creative direction for Agartha was done by Frédéric Renal, best known for the Alone in the Dark series. Development started thereafter between 1998 and 2000, depending on who you ask. The game aimed for a 1999 release date that was pushed back to 2001, though a press release did come out with some screenshots and the plot synopsis I read to you earlier. The year 2001, however, brought problems for Agartha, as this was the time when Sega announced that they would no longer be producing any more Dreamcast consoles, and the remaining developments they had left over would be finished. Agartha, however, would not be finished. No Cliché stopped development and fizzled out after Agartha's cancellation. What remains of Agartha is 15 minutes of early gameplay footage given to the website Unseen64, and in 2018, a ROM of the 2002 E3 demo of Agartha was found on eBay and dumped online. The rest of the game is as of yet unplayable. A series of Turkish promotional games for the Ben 10 franchise were developed by Proje Calide in commemoration of the growing popularity of Ben 10 in the country in 2009 after Cartoon Network's introduction the previous year. Not much is known about Proje Calide, but they are known for making plenty of promotional deals back in the day, and the games they made were officially licensed by Cartoon Network. The first set of games were released through the Turkish newspaper Sabah, which could be redeemed after getting 29 coupons. These are Mandark's Survival, Mandar's Betrayal, Lost Planet, and Nebula Chase. It is to be noted that Mandars and Mandarks don't exist in other Ben 10 media, making it highly likely they were invented for the game. In August 2017, all 4 of these games were found in the Turkish Let Go sale, though Mandark's Survival and Lost Planet have yet to be mirrored. Ben 10 Meteor Attack was an augmented reality game that required the use of a webcam, with cards for the game being given out in Nesquik products, and these cards moved Ben in the game. This game has not been mirrored, and due to the technical hassle it would entail to do so, it probably won't be. There were 3 games made as tie-ins to KFC, with certain orders at KFC giving you a code for 1 of 3 games based on Ben 10 Alien Force. Nothing of these games is known otherwise, as the website has long since been defunct. Lastly, Ben 10 Big Clash Istanbul finds Ben in Istanbul as he is to fight the aliens there. The only known playable alien was Ultimate Swampfire, with no gameplay or other details being found. The game was only available on the Turkish Cartoon Network website, though it is not anymore. The Dark Knight was going to be an open-world action video game loosely based on the film of the same name. The first mention of the game's existence was from actor Gary Oldman on July 17, 2008, as he'd mentioned he was going to be reprising his role as Lieutenant James Gordon in the game. In an interview, he mentioned that the game was in the works and that the developers were hard at work making a seamless action game with great care being taken to make sure that Batman's gliding felt smooth and fluid. He didn't mention developers and publishers, but anonymous sources said that it was a collaboration between Pandemic Studios and EA to be released on the PS3 and Xbox 360. Pandemic Studios Brisbane began work on the game, but it wasn't until a few months in that they were notified that it was a Dark Knight tie-in, so they had to scrap almost everything they had completed. The engine chosen for the game was the same engine used in the making of the Saboteur, which caused problems for Pandemic later down the line, with the engine not being as compatible for the game they were trying to develop, and software updates making the engine harder and harder to use. An HDR lighting solution took 7 months to implement and caused the game to run at 5 frames per second and crash within minutes. Level design tools were not given until 7 months into development, and combine all these issues with management making decisions behind the developers' backs, and it was only a matter of time before the game ceased to exist. Pandemic tried to save the game, bringing in contractors and all that, but in the end the game just wasn't ready for a full release. The release date was pushed back from July 2008 to December to align with the DVD release of the film, though the problem was even in September testing the game was nowhere near complete, and eventually the plug was pulled, with Pandemic closing its doors only a year after the game was supposed to release in November 2009. With the closure, 20 employees lost their jobs, $101 million of potential revenue was lost, and The Dark Knight was left as the only Batman movie without a video game tie-in. Daredevil, later renamed to Daredevil The Man Without Fear, was a 2003 beat-em-up action game based on the Marvel superhero of the same name. The game was developed by 5000 Feet and was to be published by Encore Inc. for the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and PC. The game's story is partly based on the story Elektra Lives Again, with claims that Kingpin has been assassinated and a mad scramble arises between the gangs of Hell's Kitchen as they try to gain power over the city. Daredevil learns of all this mayhem and his friend Foggy Nelson is kidnapped, so he teams with the newly resurrected Elektra to save Foggy before it's revealed that Kingpin has faked his death to cause the gangs of Hell's Kitchen to turn on each other, and it's up to Daredevil to stop him. 5000 Feet began working on the project when they helped 3DO port Army Men to PlayStation. They decided they wanted to make their own game and got into a working relationship with Encore Inc., who had recently licensed some Marvel IPs like Captain America and Daredevil so they could make video games with them. The game was originally planned to be a series of vignettes of Daredevil's most important moments that earned Marvel and Encore's approval. This was before 5000 Feet's president, Tim Page, was contacted by a friend at Sony who alerted him to the fact that a Daredevil movie was in the works over at Fox, with the release date set at February 14th, 2003, with the game's budget increasing, fundamental gameplay changing, and the release date was changed to coincide with the film. They also decided then that it would also be released on the Xbox and PC. 5000 Feet as a third-party developer had to meet the demands of the multitude of studios involved, with Sony mandating a beat-em-up combat system and grinding like Tony Hawk Pro Skater, with Microsoft being more relaxed and letting the developers do as they pleased. Marvel and Sony disagreed about what the game should be, as Sony valued experimentation and Marvel wanted faithfulness to the comics. Despite the disputes, development ran smoothly until Encore hired some new employees to create a new engine for the game, much like Criterion Software's Renderware. Encore didn't want to pay the fees for the engine, and thus they tried to make their own version of Renderware. This did not end well. The mechanics in the game suffered heavily for this decision. Due to this, the open world element was scrapped in favor of a linear style with internal strife, missed release dates, alleged drug abuse, 5000 Feet's developers leaving the project, and Marvel refusing to sign off on the game due to them falling too far into Sony's ideals. The game was never released, and as 5000 Feet has been defunct since 2012, it's unknown whether any builds could still circulate. website. The only known footage of the game is from P2P Online, who uploaded footage on November 10th, 2020 of a build from July 2003. This build has not released. Ura Zelda, translated as Other Zelda, was an add-on for The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time using the short-lived failure known as the Nintendo 64 disk drive. The project was shelved due to the cancellation and discontinuation of the DD, and eventually released as The Legend of Zelda Master Quest in 2002. During the production of Ocarina of Time, the transition from a DD to regular Nintendo 64 cartridge left some ideas unrealized for the game, and Shigeru Miyamoto wanted to add some of those things back with Ura Zelda. Once the DD failed, Nintendo thought of other ways to bring Ura Zelda to a larger audience. With the release of The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker, emulated copies of Ocarina of Time and Master Quest were given out for pre-orders. It is to be noted, however, that Master Quest didn't contain much of what Ura Zelda was to be, and mostly remixed dungeons from Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time did contain leftovers from Ura Zelda in its code. Once the public found out about Ura Zelda, speculation arose as to what it would have contained, with some examples being the removed sword beam being re-added to the game, a physical Triforce, the Unicorn Fountain, an area resembling the Great Fairy Fountain but with a unicorn statue inside, which was shown in trailers for the game but not featured in it, a Wind and Ice Temple, and permanent field changes such as broken objects staying broken for the entire playthrough. Ura Zelda's fate was sealed, however, in 2010. ZethN64 led a group of artists in an attempt to recreate Ura Zelda in a mod for Ocarina of Time called the Ura Project. This game was an ambitious title for sure, adding a new protagonist, story, overworld, dungeons, and a new soundtrack. The team's inexperience led to the ordeal being cancelled in 2013. On August 9th, 2016, another fan named Alex S. on gbatemp.net attempted to finish the Ura Project in a new mod entitled Another Restoration of Ura Zelda. Due to a lack of updates, however, consensus is that the mod is cancelled as well, but only time will tell. Scribblenauts Fightin' Words was a planned iOS adaptation of the Scribblenauts series following Maxwell Other's magic notebook that allows him to summon anything he wants by writing it down. The premise is as follows. Scribblenauts Fightin' Words is a free-to-play word puzzle mobile game from 5th Cell and Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment. Use your creativity, command of the keyboard, and the magic of Maxwell's notebook to battle creatures across the Scribblenauts universe, recruit characters with their own unique abilities onto your team, and save the world from the devious mind-controlling Blugs. Maxwell and Lily are recalling back to the start of some amazing adventures they've had with this magic notebook. They've time-traveled, fought monsters, stopped alien invasions, stormed castles, and everything else in between. Codenamed Project Green, Scribblenauts Fighting Words started production in 2014 by its developer 5th Cell and was scheduled for a 2016 release. After 2 years of development, the project was suddenly cancelled despite being almost complete, and Warner Bros. Laid off 45 5th Cell employees, including lead animator Tim Borelli. Shortly before its cancellation, signups for the beta were held at scribbeta.wbgames.com, but no screenshots or video of the game were made public. It is currently unknown if Fighting Words is going to be released on Android devices like Scribblenauts Remix and Scribblenauts Unlimited were. The search began almost immediately with a Twitter post from Steel Beaver saying that an email was sent out to those who signed up for the beta with a link to download it, with anyone who had downloaded it possibly uploading footage to the internet. If that was impossible, perhaps WB Games and 5th Cell employees could be contacted. In late 2016, a screenshot of the menu from the beta was uploaded to Instagram by Super the Cool. In early 2021, Zig and Diga met and started a search for the game, which has remained fruitless to this day, as while developers were contacted, no responses were given. Many screenshots of the beta have appeared online, though video footage is not allowed by Warner Bros. Sadness is the name given to a cancelled early Nintendo Wii title, being a psychological horror game made by Nibris. Sadness was promoted as a survival horror game focusing on psychological horror with narcolepsy, nyctophobia, and paranoid schizophrenia, with a gothic horror aesthetic and black and white color scheme. The game, as is tradition with early Wii titles, made extensive use of the Wii's motion controls, with examples given such as using the remote to light a torch and wave it to scare rats, using the remote as a lasso to throw a rope over a wall, or using it to reach out and grab items. The game also strived for open-minded gameplay, with anything and everything being usable as a weapon. The game focused on Maria Lengyel, a Polish-Hungarian aristocrat in the pre-World War I Russian Empire, now modern-day Ukraine, who has to protect her son Alexander after their train derails. Alexander is blinded by the incident and begins demonstrating odd behavior that gradually worsens. The game's setting and monsters featured inspirations from Slavic folklore, and the game featured many branching paths and endings. Nibris teamed up with Frontline Studios and Digital Amigos to make the game, and it was scheduled for a fourth quarter of 2007 release. Sadness was often attributed as vaporware, as Nibris refused to show screenshots, demos, trailers, footage, or teasers of the game in action, leading to speculation and criticism of Nimbus. Frontline's departure from the project and the game's delay to 2009 did not help matters, and several of Nimbus's announcements fell through, such as a trailer by the end of 2007 and an appearance at the 2008 Game Developers Conference. Fog Studios, Nimbus's marketing partner, insisted that the game wasn't vaporware and just needed a publisher. In May 2009, N Europe interviewed Adam Artur Antolsky, a former Nimbus employee and scriptwriter for Sadness, who uncovered that the delays were due to disputes between developers, with progress in the first year being the script, concept design, and only a single 3D model being a minecart. Antolsky also said that Nimbus is better at promotion than making things. Nimbus went absent from E3 2009 and the game silently missed its release date. Nimbus's website closed down in 2010, and later that year, after some of the soundtrack was released, Sadness was officially cancelled, with Nimbus disappearing shortly thereafter. Nothing of the game has ever been seen since. Hellraiser was going to be an NES game based on the 1987 horror film of the same name. The game was developed by Color Dreams, infamous for their unlicensed games of poor quality who bypassed the Nintendo seal of approval process. Dan Lawton, a founder of Color Dreams, somehow convinced not only his partners but also the movie studio that making an NES game based on the film would be a good idea, and set out with a budget of anywhere between $35,000 and $50,000. The engine used for the game was the same one used for Wolfenstein 3D, which for obvious reasons would not work on a normal NES cartridge, so Lawton hired Ron Riley to engineer a new cartridge for the game. Dubbed the Super Cartridge, the cartridge for Hellraiser had a Z80 processor, programmable array logic chips, and an additional 4 MB of RAM. The cartridge could also intercept the NES's ROM and RAM accesses to manipulate video in real time, allowing sprite manipulation, fully animated backgrounds, pixel-by-pixel manipulation of the screen, panning, and zooming. This was highly advanced for the time, though the palette swapping in the game didn't work as intended, going slower than intended. The other option was an entire add-on for the game, but the cost of the game and the add-on would have outweighed the cost of the Super Cartridge itself. The game centered on the player character who was stuck in the Lemurchan's puzzle box, solving puzzles on the outside of the box to open it and then doing them in reverse order to put the Cenobites back in the box. During the entire ordeal, the Cenobites are trying to stop the player from progressing. Notably, changing the layout of the exterior box would change the level layout of the inside. The game was quietly cancelled a few months into its production due to a multitude of factors. The cost of the Super Cartridge itself would make the game more expensive than usual games, which combined with retailers beginning to cease sale of unlicensed game for Nintendo consoles, made profits from the game's production virtually impossible. Teasers for the game were inserted into many magazines including Nintendo Power, GamePro, and Electronic Gaming Monthly, with Sega Genesis and Atari Lynx ports that never panned out. Color Dreams eventually changed labels to Bunch Games before settling on Wisdom Tree, which focused on making unlicensed Christian games. When asked about the possibility of anything from the game being released, Lawton said that the hardware was done, the art was 20% done, and the programming hadn't even begun yet. Thanks for watching this video. Do you have any other pieces of lost media you'd like to see me talk about? Let me know. Anyway, I gotta change the content of my game to better fit the age rating, so I'll see you next time. Goodbye.